Every morning in New York, as dawn peeked through the skyscrapers, Jason Statham woke up at precisely 6 o'clock. He opened his eyes, turned off the alarm, and began his day like a finely tuned machine. Breakfast was a bowl of oatmeal, a boiled egg, and a cup of black coffee with no sugar. He put on a crisp white shirt, black trousers, and stepped out of his small apartment in Brooklyn. Jason's life was so simple it was almost invisible amidst the bustling crowds. No one would have guessed that this middle-aged man with a calm demeanor was once a CIA agent, a ghost in the underworld, a man once feared by criminal organizations. Jason worked at a supermarket in Manhattan, stocking shelves, checking inventory, and making small talk with his colleagues. He liked the routine, just as he enjoyed rereading The Old Man and the Sea every night at 1:30 in the morning. The book reminded him of patience, of the silent battles fought with oneself. But the past was not so easily left behind. Despite having left the world of espionage, Jason still carried the instincts of a warrior, always observing, always ready. One afternoon, at a corner cafe near the supermarket, Jason met Anna Kendrick, a young woman with bright but weary eyes. Anna often sat in a corner of the cafe, wearing a short skirt and heavy makeup, waiting for clients. She was a freelance singer, passionate about music, but the pressures of life had pushed her into selling her body. Jason didn't judge. He struck up a conversation, asking about the recorder she had just bought, about the song she wrote. "You have a beautiful voice. Don't waste it," he said, his voice low but sincere. Anna smiled. For the first time that day, feeling as if someone truly saw her for who she was. But that small flicker of light was quickly extinguished. One evening, as Jason was reading in the cafe, a tall man in a black suit walked in. He was Carlos Mendez, a notorious pimp in the area, an underling of a powerful kingpin from Mexico City. Carlos grabbed Anna, yelling at her for refusing a wealthy client. He struck her with a slap that sent her to the floor, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. Jason stood up, his hand tightening on his book. But his eyes flickered over and noticed the gun tucked into Carlos's waistband. He paused, observing, memorizing every detail, the scorpion tattoo on the man's hand, the large gold ring, and the deep, threatening voice. "Stay out of it, old man." Carlos is gnarled, tossing Jason a business card for a nightclub in Harlem. "If you want some fun, come here." He dragged Anna into a car and disappeared into the traffic. Jason stood there, his eyes as cold as steel. The business card in his hand felt like a challenge. He knew that if he intervened, the peaceful life he had built would crumble. But the image of Anna being hit, her eyes full of despair, reignited an old flame within him. The next day, Jason returned to the cafe. But Anna wasn't there. The owner whispered that she had been beaten badly and was in the hospital. Without hesitation, Jason went to the hospital immediately. In the hospital room, Anna lay there, her face bruised, her breathing shallow. Beside her was Emma Watson, another girl who also worked for Carlos. Emma explained that Anna was beaten for standing up to a client. "In Carlos's world, we have no rights," she said, her voice trembling. Jason clenched his fists. "Anga suing." But he remained calm. He gave Emma some money, told her to take care of Anna, and then left. On his way back, Jason stopped in front of a hardware store. He bought a small hammer, a few tools, and a coil of thin steel wire. In his mind, a plan was already forming. He was no longer an ordinary supermarket employee. The agent of old, who once made his enemies tremble, was returning. Carlos and those behind him would pay the price. But Jason knew this wasn't just a battle with the mafia. This was a fight to protect people like Anna, those trapped in the darkness. He returned to his apartment, opened a drawer, and took out an old stopwatch. It had been a long time since he had used it, but tonight, it would run again. Jason sat down, wiping the hammer clean, his eyes sharp and cold. His peaceful life was over, but he had no regrets. Justice, sometimes, needs a sharp blade. What area are you listening to this story from? And what time is it there now? Leave a comment below to let me know you're well and focused on this story. My dear friend, we will continue shortly. Night fell over New York, the neon lights of Harlem blinking like owl eyes in the darkness. Jason Statham stepped into a small alley where Carlos Mendez's nightclub was hidden behind a worn-out steel door. The business card in his jacket pocket burned like a declaration of war. He wore a black coat, a baseball cap pulled low, his right hand tightly gripping the stopwatch. Tonight, Jason wasn't here to negotiate. He was here to end it. Inside the nightclub, electronic music pounded, the air thick with the smell of alcohol and smoke. The crowd danced under the flashing lights, oblivious to the man moving silently through them. Jason scanned the room. 4 bouncers stood in the corners, guns tucked behind their backs, a bartender with a scorpion tattoo identical to Carlos's, and at the back of the room, Carlos Mendez sat on a leather couch, counting money. With 2 girls being forced to entertain clients beside him, Jason recognized one of them as Anna Kendrick. Her eyes were empty, her hand trembling as she held a glass of wine. He approached the bar and ordered a glass of water. The bartender glanced at him and sneered. Lost. Old man Jason didn't answer, simply pulling out the business card and placing it on the counter. Get Carlos over here. I have business. The bartender frowned, but Jason's ice-cold gaze made him hesitate. He signaled a bouncer, and a few minutes later, Carlos appeared, a cigar in hand, a smug grin on his face. Old man, you want to buy the girl? $9,800. That's a bargain. Carlos laughed, pointing at Anna. Jason placed a stack of cash on the table, his eyes never leaving the man. Take the money. Let her go. But Carlos just laughed scornfully and pushed the stack of money onto the floor. Fresh meat isn't for an old geezer like you. Get lost. He waved his hand, and the 4 bouncers moved in, guns at the ready. Jason stood perfectly still, his left hand touching the stopwatch. You should have taken the money, he said, his voice a low, final warning. Carlos laughed, but his smile vanished when Jason pressed the button on the watch. A 12-second countdown began. Jason observed, his eyes like a scanner. The bouncer on the left had a Glock. His breath reeked of alcohol. The one on the right had a dagger tucked in his belt. His movements were slow. Carlos, right hand holding the cigar, left hand near the gun under the table. The 2 girls in the back were panicking. But Anna looked at Jason, a flicker of hope in her eyes. 10 seconds. He moved, in one step, as fast as a phantom. He snatched the gun from the bouncer on the left, smashing the butt of the weapon into the man's temple. The man collapsed, unconscious. 8 seconds. The second man drew his knife, but Jason spun, using the man's own dagger to stab him through the shoulder, pinning him to the wooden table. A scream erupted, but the music drowned out every sound. 6 seconds. Carlos panicked, pulling his gun, but Jason was already in front of him. He snapped Carlos's wrist. The gun clattering to the floor, a punch to the chest sent the man to his knees, gasping for air. 4 seconds. The remaining 2 bouncers charged, but Jason grabbed a bottle opener from the bar and threw it with precision into one man's eye, making him scream and clutch his face. The last man raised his gun, but Jason had already glided forward, wrapping the thin steel wire around the man's neck and pulling tight. 2 seconds. The watch stopped. 12 seconds. Carlos lay on the floor, blood trickling from his nose. His eyes filled with terror. Jason bent down, picked up the stack of money, and put it in his pocket. "You should have taken it," he said, his voice as cold as ice. He turned to Anna and gestured for her to follow. "Let's go." Anna, trembling, quickly followed him out of the suffocating nightclub. Outside, the cold New York air was a shock to Anna's system. She wrapped her arms around her shoulders, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. Jason just nodded, taking her to a small, safe hotel. "Get some rest. I'll get you out of here in the morning." He left, his figure melting into the night. But back in the nightclub, a surviving henchman crawled to his feet and made a call to Mexico City. On the other end of the line, a deep, furious voice boomed. "Who dares to touch my men?" It was Javier Bardem, the kingpin behind Carlos, who ran his criminal empire from a lavish mansion in Mexico City. He roared, "Find him. Kill him." Jason returned to his apartment, wiping the blood from his hands. He knew the fight had only just begun. The stopwatch lay on the table, a silent reminder. The enemy's time was running out. In a magnificent mansion in Mexico City, crystal chandeliers illuminated gold-leafed walls. Javier Bardem, the notorious mafia boss, sat in an armchair, holding a glass of red wine, staring intently at his phone screen. News of Carlos Mendez's demise in New York had just reached him. A multi-million-dollar nightclub, a key link in his trafficking ring, now shattered in just 12 seconds. A middle-aged man. The henchman's voice trembled over the phone. Javier squeezed the wine glass, and it shattered in his hand. "Find him. I want his head on my dinner table tomorrow." In New York, the morning sun filtered through the window of Jason Statham's small apartment. He sat at the table, inspecting his stopwatch, his expression thoughtful. He had taken Anna Kendrick to a safe place last night, but he knew Javier wouldn't let it go. A man like Javier, with a network stretching from Mexico City to the United States, would not forgive anyone who sabotaged his empire. Jason stood up, put on his jacket, and prepared for a new day. But today, he carried a dagger hidden in his shoe. At the supermarket in Manhattan, Jason went about his work as usual, stocking shelves and chatting with colleagues. He took notice of Chris Pratt, a young employee weighing over 100 kilograms who always dreamed of being a security guard but failed due to his poor physical condition. "I'll help you," Jason said, his voice firm. He spent his lunch breaks training Chris, teaching him how to run, lift weights, and control his breathing. "If there's a fire, you have to be able to drag me out." "To understand," Jason said sternly. Chris nodded, drenched in sweat, but his eyes were filled with determination. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, Javier summoned Liam Neeson, his top assassin. Liam was a killing machine, cold and methodical, with eyes as sharp as a razor. "Find the man in New York. He killed Carlos. I want to know who he is, and I want him dead," Javier ordered. Liam nodded, saying nothing, merely checking the Desert Eagle in his jacket. He boarded a plane to New York, carrying a list of places Carlos used to manage, including the cafe where Anna worked. In New York, Jason returned to the familiar cafe, hoping for news about Anna, but the owner shook his head. "She hasn't come back. Some say she's in hiding." Jason nodded, but a sense of unease grew within him. He left the cafe, walking through the crowded streets, his eyes scanning every corner, noticing a few unfamiliar men watching him. A black car with tinted windows was parked on the corner. Jason didn't break his stride, but his right hand touched the dagger in his shoe. He knew they had arrived. That evening at the supermarket, as Jason was helping Chris train, a group of local police officers appeared. They weren't in uniform, but the way they looked at Jason made him suspicious. The leader, Tom Hardy, introduced himself as a detective and asked about Anna. "Where is she, I hear? You were close to her," Tom said, his tone laced with insinuation. Jason remained calm, replying, "I don't know where she is." Tom smirked, pulling out a photo of Anna beaten in the hospital. "Don't mess with me. Javier doesn't like to wait." Jason clenched his fists but stayed silent. He realized Tom was on Javier's payroll. A corrupt cop. When Tom and his crew left, Jason turned to Chris. "You stay here. Don't go outside." He left the supermarket and walked to a deserted alley. There, he opened his bag, took out an old burner phone, and called an old friend at the FBI, Morgan Freeman. "Morgan, I need you to run a check on someone. Name's Javier Bardem, in Mexico City. He's behind the Anna situation." Morgan sighed over the phone. "Jason, you're in deep trouble again." But he agreed to help, promising to send the information soon. That night, Jason returned to his apartment. Checking the windows and the door, he installed a small camera in the hallway and hid a knife under his pillow. Sitting down, he opened The Old Man and the Sea. But his mind wasn't on the pages. He thought about Anna, about people like her, trapped in Javier's web. He knew Liam Neeson was coming, and the real battle had only just begun. In Mexico City, Javier received a report from Liam. "He's a ghost. No record. No trace. But I will find him." Javier nodded, his eyes cold. "Kill him, no matter who he is." Under the chandelier, the new glass of wine in his hand reflected a light as red as blood. In a small apartment in Brooklyn, New York, the light from a desk lamp illuminated Jason Statham's face. He sat motionless, his eyes fixed on an old stopwatch, a relic that had accompanied him through dozens of dangerous missions. Tonight, old memories crashed over him like a violent wave. The years as a CIA agent, the sleepless nights in the Middle Eastern desert, the countless brushes with death. He had left it all behind, choosing a normal life. But the past wouldn't let him go. Javier Bardem and his criminal empire from Mexico City had dragged him back to the line between life and death. Early in the morning, Jason left the apartment, carrying a dagger and a small backpack containing a few electronic devices. He knew Liam Neeson, Javier's assassin, was in New York. Tracking him, the streets of Manhattan were bustling. But Jason could feel unseen eyes watching him. A guy in a hoodie stood on a street corner, pretending to read a newspaper. A black car was parked near the supermarket, its engine still running. Jason quickened his pace, ducked into an alley, and checked the hidden camera in his pocket. He was right. They were on his tail. At the supermarket, Jason continued training Chris Pratt. The large young man could now run a few laps around the parking lot without getting out of breath. "You're making progress," Jason said, patting Chris on the shoulder. But his mind was elsewhere. He thought of Anna Kendrick, the girl hiding in a motel on the outskirts of town. He had to ensure she was safe before Liam found her. At noon, Jason received a message from Morgan Freeman. Javier Bardem runs a human trafficking and money laundering ring from Mexico City. He has an inside man in the New York police force. Be careful, Jason. He sent Liam Neeson a killing machine. Jason nodded at his phone screen, his eyes turning ice cold. He knew Liam was no ordinary foe, but neither was he. As evening fell, Jason spotted a group of suspicious cops near the supermarket. Leading them was Tom Hardy, the corrupt inspector who had threatened him before. They were shaking down a small diner owned by Mrs. Proscent, Ellen Pompeo, Chris's mother. Tom pocketed a wad of cash, smirking menacingly. Just for this week, old lady. Make sure you have more next time. Unless you want to see this place burn down again. Jason stood in the shadows, recording a video with a phone hidden in his sleeve. When Tom and his crew left, he entered the diner and handed the phone to Mrs. Pompeo. Keep this. If they come back, send it to the press. Mrs. Pompeo thanked him with trembling hands, but Jason just shook his head. Just do your job. I'll handle this. He left the diner and went straight to a night market in Chinatown. There, he met an old acquaintance, Samuel Jackson, an illegal arms dealer who owed him a favor. I need information on Tom Hardy, Jason said, placing a stack of cash on the table. Samuel smirked. He's Javier's attack dog, takes dirty money from Mexico City, provided protection for Carlos Mendez's old crew. Jason nodded, committing every detail to memory. That night, Jason followed Tom Hardy to an abandoned warehouse in the Bronx. Inside, 5 of his goons were loudly dividing money. Jason slipped in and planted a small listening device under the table. Through his earpiece, he heard Tom mention Anna. That girl knows too much. Liam Neeson is hunting her. If you find her, kill her on the spot. Jason clenched his fists, rage boiling inside him. He couldn't let Anna fall into their hands. He returned to the motel where Anna was hiding. She was huddled on the bed, clutching a voice recorder. I'm scared. Jason, she whispered. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice firm. I won't let them touch you. I promise, sir. But as he left, a black car was parked at the corner of the street. Jason realized Liam was close. Returning to his apartment, Jason checked the security cameras. A strange figure appeared in the hallway, dressed as a worker. But his polished shoes didn't belong to an electrician. Jason gave a faint smile, took out his dagger, and wedged it in the door jamb. He knew tonight would not be peaceful. He opened a copy of The Old Man and the Sea and read a passage, but his eyes remained glued to the camera feed. Soft footsteps echoed outside the door. Jason stood up, a thin steel wire in his hand, ready for the next fight. In Mexico City, Javier Bardem received a report from Liam. He's no civilian. Could be a former agent, Liam said over the phone, his voice as cold as ice. Javier slammed his fist on the table. Find him, at any cost. Under the chandelier, his shadow stretched long, like an enraged predator. The wind howled through a dark alley in Brooklyn, New York, like a whisper from death itself. Jason Statham stood behind his apartment door, gripping a thin steel wire, his eyes glued to the security camera feed. The man disguised as a worker, whom he knew was one of Liam Neeson's henchmen, was silently picking the lock. Jason took a deep breath, his mind as sharp as a blade. He had faced more dangerous men, but this time, it was personal. Anna Kendrick was being hunted, and he was the only one standing between her and Javier Bardem's scythe. The door clicked softly. The henchman stepped inside, holding a silenced pistol. The hallway light cast across his face, revealing a long scar on his cheek. Jason didn't wait. He lunged from the shadows, wrapping the steel wire around the man's neck and pulling tight. The man struggled, his gun clattering to the floor. A punch to the temple knocked him unconscious. Jason searched his pockets, finding a fake police badge and a picture of Anna. Liam is faster than I thought, he muttered, stuffing the photo into his pocket. In Mexico City, Javier Bardem sat in a secret meeting room surrounded by surveillance monitors. He roared when he heard his henchman had been taken down. Liam. I pay you to get results. Not to fail Liam Neeson. Standing in a New York hotel room. Didn't reply. He checked his Desert Eagle. His eyes cold. He's not a normal guy. I'll handle it, Liam said, then hung up. He had tracked Anna down through Emma Watson, the girl who had cared for her at the hospital. Liam didn't hesitate. He found Emma in a rundown apartment in Queens. And just minutes later, she lay motionless on the floor, her neck broken. No witnesses, Liam muttered, wiping blood from his hands. Meanwhile, Jason moved quickly through New York. He went to the motel where Anna was hiding. But she was gone, leaving only a note, "Thank you. I'll take care of myself." Jason crumpled the note in his fist, a mix of anger and worry churning inside him. He knew Anna couldn't protect herself from Liam. He called Morgan Freeman, his voice urgent. "Morgan, find Anna Kendrick. She's on the run, and Liam Neeson is hunting her." Morgan said, "You're going up against an entire empire." Jason, "I'll try. But be careful. Javier has people in the FBI." Jason nodded, hung up, and boarded a bus to Harlem. At the supermarket, Jason met Chris Pratt, who had just finished his workout. "I have an interview for a security guard job," Chris said excitedly. Jason smiled, but his eyes were distant. "That's great. But you stay put for now. Someone's following me." He left the supermarket and walked to a night market, where he met Samuel Jackson again. "I need a weapon. Light. Easy to conceal," Jason said. Samuel handed him a small pistol and a razor-sharp dagger. "Javier is sending an army to New York. You're a dead man if you're not fast." Jason didn't reply, just tucked the weapons into his jacket. That night, Jason returned to his apartment and checked the cameras. A new figure had appeared. Not a fake worker, but Liam Neeson himself. He stood on the street corner, observing the building, phone in hand. Jason knew time was running out. He took out a small vial of pills, pretending they were for motion sickness, and placed it on the table as bait. Then he left the apartment through the back exit and slipped into an abandoned building opposite. From there, he watched Liam enter the apartment, inspect the vial, and frown. Clever, but not clever enough, Liam muttered as he left. Jason watched through binoculars. He realized Liam wasn't acting alone. A team of 3 henchmen, armed with rifles, was surrounding the area. Jason moved quickly, slipping into an alley where one of the men stood guard. A swift chop to the back of the neck sent the man crumbling to the ground. Jason took the man's ID and discovered he was a fake cop working for Javier. "Dirty cops," Jason muttered, pocketing the ID. He called Morgan again. "Liam's near me. He has cops as insiders. Find out who Javier controls in the department." Morgan promised to dig deeper, but warned, "Jason, you're playing with fire. Back off." Jason didn't answer. He knew that backing off meant abandoning Anna. He returned to the alley, preparing for the confrontation. In the darkness, his dagger glinted, reflecting his ice-cold eyes. In Mexico City, Javier watched the video from Liam, which recorded Jason taking down the henchman. He's an agent. Javier Ward. Find out his past. "Liam, I want to know everything. Under the light." His shadow stretched long, like a monster ready to devour its enemy. Darkness enveloped New York, the streets of Queens growing quiet, with only the distant sound of sirens echoing. Jason Statham sat in an abandoned warehouse, the beam of a small flashlight illuminating a city map. He had installed 5 miniature cameras around his apartment, each one recording every move made by Liam Neeson and his men. On his phone screen, he saw Liam standing before his apartment door, checking the lock, his eyes as cold as a hunting leopard's. Jason gave a faint smile. "If you want to play, we'll play." He had prepared a trap. Under the apartment floor, he had hidden a thin steel wire connected to a small gas canister. In the corner of the room, an old radio was set on a timer, ready to blast music as a distraction. Jason knew Liam was no easy opponent, but he was no easy prey either. He checked the dagger and the pistol he got from Samuel Jackson, then silently left the warehouse, moving through the alleys to get closer to the apartment. Meanwhile, in Mexico City, Javier Bardem slammed his fist on the table, a wine glass shattering on the marble floor. "Liam, what are you doing? You can't handle one middle-aged man." Over the phone, Liam replied, his voice a low, icy tone. "He's a former agent, Javier. There's no file on him, but I found a lead. He used to work for the CIA. I'm going to take him alive. Javier Ward. I don't need him alive. I need him dead." He ordered Liam to bring in more men and not let Jason escape. In New York, Liam and 3 of his men breached Jason's apartment. The door swung open, and the darkness inside swallowed them. Liam raised his gun, scanning the room. He noticed the motion sickness pills on the table, a fake plane ticket, child's play. Liam muttered, but then the radio switched on, blasting loud rock music throughout the apartment. One of the henchmen, startled, fired wildly into a corner. At that exact moment, the tripwire under the floor activated, and the gas canister sprayed thick smoke everywhere. Liam yelled, "It's a trap, fall back," but it was too late. Jason emerged from the shadows, his dagger flashing. He slit the throat of the nearest henchman with lightning speed. The second man raised his gun, but Jason threw a flashlight, hitting him squarely in the temple and knocking him to the ground. Liam spun around, firing repeatedly, but Jason rolled behind the sofa, under the cover of the thick smoke. He lunged forward, wrapping the steel wire around the last henchman's neck and pulling tight. Only Liam remained, standing in the smoke, his gun aimed into the darkness. "Come out, Agent," Liam growled. Jason didn't answer, but a soft footstep echoed from behind. Liam spun around, firing into the empty space. At that exact moment, Jason dropped from the ceiling, where he had been hiding on a crossbeam. A punch to the throat made Liam crumble, his gun falling from his hand. Jason pinned him to the floor, his knife at his throat. "Tell me, where is Javier?" Liam gave a weak, bloody smile. "You'll never make it to Mexico City." Jason tightened his grip on the knife, then stopped. It tied Liam up, left him unconscious, and took his phone to check his messages. Jason left the apartment. Taking the data from Liam's phone, he called Morgan Freeman. "I have Javier's phone number. Can you trace it?" Morgan sighed. "You're digging yourself deeper into the tiger's den." "Jason, I'll try. But Javier has people in the Mexican government. He's not an easy target." Jason hung up, his gaze hardening. He knew that to protect Anna Kendrick and put an end to Javier, he had to strike directly at his stronghold. He went to a bar on the Lower East Side, where Samuel Jackson was waiting. "I need a plane ticket to Mexico City." "No records." "No trace," Jason said. Samuel nodded, handing him a fake passport. "You're insane." "But I like that. Javier will never expect you to dare to go there." Jason took the passport, his eyes flashing with iron resolve. Meanwhile, Liam woke up. his hands tied, dried blood on his face. He roared, snapping the ropes, and called Mexico City. He knows about Javier. He's on his way. Javier stood in his mansion, looking out at the glittering lights of Mexico City. "Good," he said, his voice as cold as ice. "Let him come. I will bury him here." Jason sat on a night bus, looking out the window. New York was fading into the distance, but he knew the real battle was waiting for him ahead. The dagger in his pocket was a reminder, justice doesn't come easy. But he would not stop. The plane landed at the international airport in Mexico City. As the night sky turned pitch black, Jason Statham stepped out, wearing a baseball cap with a small backpack slung over his shoulder. He blended into the crowd, his eyes scanning every corner, noticing a few men in black suits standing near the gate, their hands touching their earpieces. Javier Bardem's men. Jason slipped through the crowd, got into an old taxi, and ordered the driver to head straight for the slums on the outskirts. He knew that to defeat Javier, he had to shatter the foundation of his empire, the money laundering ring in Mexico City. In Javier's lavish mansion, the light from a chandelier illuminated a meeting table covered in stacks of dollar bills. Javier Bardem sat at the head of the table, listening to a report from one of his henchmen. Liam Neeson was attacked in New York. He's alive. But we lost the agent. Javier slammed his hand on the table, his eyes blazing with rage. "Find him. If he dares to come here, I'll show him hell." He ordered security to be tightened at all facilities, especially the money laundering warehouse in the Iztapalapa district, where hundreds of millions of dollars were processed every week. Jason parked his car in a dark alley, a few blocks from the warehouse. He took out a small tablet, connecting to the data from Liam's phone. A message from Javier revealed the warehouse's exact address. Jason gave a faint smile, checking his backpack, a pistol, a combat knife, and a signal jammer. He put on a worker's jacket and a hard hat. Disguised as an electrician, his steps were light, like a phantom gliding through the darkness. At the warehouse, fluorescent lights illuminated dozens of forced laborers, counting money relentlessly. Outside, 5 guards patrolled, rifles slung over their shoulders. Jason slipped in through a fire exit, disabling the alarm system with the jammer. He climbed up into the warehouse rafters, observing from above. Down below, a scarred man, Diego Luna, the warehouse manager, was inspecting the cash. Jason made a mental note. Diego was Javier's trusted lieutenant, the one who knew all the Syndicate secrets. Jason dropped down, taking out a guard with a swift blow to the back of the neck. He took the man's ID card and walked into the main area. The workers looked up, their eyes filled with fear, but they dared not make a sound. Jason approached Diego, pretending to be a new technician. "The money printer is broken. I was called in to fix it," he said in a calm voice. Diego frowned, but was not suspicious. He led Jason to a hidden corner where the counterfeit printing press was running. Just then, Jason made his move. He drew his knife, pressed it to Diego's throat, and whispered, "Tell me, where is the USB with Javier's transaction list?" Trembling, Diego pointed to a small safe. Jason tied him up, opened the safe, and took the USB, but another guard spotted him and shouted, and the alarm blared through the warehouse. Jason dove behind a crate, pistol in hand. 4 guards charged, firing relentlessly. He fired back, hitting 2 of them square in the chest. The third drew a knife and rushed him, but Jason used a steel wire to trip him, then plunged the knife into his shoulder. Diego tried to crawl away, but Jason stopped him, snatching a gun from his hand. "Thanks for the USB," he said, pistol whipping Diego and knocking him unconscious. He stuffed the USB into his pocket and ran for the back door. Outside, a truck was waiting, driven by Samuel Jackson, who had arranged the escape. "You've really lit up Mexico City," Samuel chuckled, hitting the gas. Behind them, the warehouse burst into flames. A small bomb Jason had hidden in the printer, having just detonated. Back in New York, Morgan Freeman called Jason. "I found Anna Kendrick. She's at a church in Brooklyn, hidden by the priest. But Liam Neeson knows too. You have to hurry." Jason nodded, his gaze sharp and cold. He opened the USB on his tablet and saw a list of hundreds of Javier's illegal transactions, from human trafficking to oil smuggling. "This is the key," he muttered, sending the data to Morgan. "Send this to the FBI. Keep my name out of it." In his mansion in Mexico City, Javier received news that the warehouse was destroyed. He roared, smashing the surveillance monitor. "Liam." "Where are you?" he called. But Liam did not answer. In New York, Liam stood in front of the church, looking through a window at Anna's silhouette. He checked his gun and stepped inside. But far away, Jason was already on a plane back to New York, his hand tightly gripping his knife. He knew the confrontation with Liam was inevitable. A supermarket in Manhattan, New York, was bathed in flickering fluorescent lights. It was late at night, with only a few employees left cleaning up. Jason Statham stood in a corner of the stockroom, checking the pistol and steel wire in his jacket pocket. He had just returned from Mexico City, carrying the USB with evidence of Javier Bardem's crimes, but he knew that Liam Neeson, Javier's top assassin, had found Anna Kendrick and was about to make his move. The supermarket, his workplace, was now a battlefield. Liam had set a trap, and Jason was ready to spring it. The fire exit clicked open. 4 of Liam's men, armed with rifles, slipped inside. Jason watched them on a hidden camera on a shelf, his eyes cold as ice. He was prepared. Steel wires were strung across the aisles. A fire extinguisher was rigged with a smoke grenade, and a power drill was hidden behind the counter. His co-worker, Chris Pratt, stood trembling in a corner. "Chris, get everyone out the back," Jason ordered, his voice low but firm. Chris nodded and led the other employees out. Liam Neeson appeared, walking slowly, a desert eagle held ready in his hand. He stopped in the middle of an aisle, looking around. "Come out." "Agent, I know you're here," his voice echoed, cold as ice. Jason did not answer, moving silently behind the shelves, steel wire in hand. One of the henchmen approached, unaware of the wire stretched across the floor. Jason yanked it taut, the wire cinching around the man's legs and sending him crashing down. A single punch to the back of the neck knocked him out. But the noise attracted another man. He fired repeatedly, bullets tearing into the shelves and sending wood splinters flying. Jason rolled and threw the fire extinguisher. White smoke erupted, engulfing the aisle. He leaped over a shelf, his knife flashing as he stabbed the second man in the shoulder. The man screamed, dropping his gun. Jason kicked him hard in the chest, sending him crashing into a wall, where he slumped to the floor. Only 2 henchmen and Liam remained. He activated a hidden radio in the corner, and loud rock music blared out, disorienting them. One man ran towards the sound, but Jason was waiting. He used the power drill, the bit tearing into the man's hand, making him scream before he passed out. Liam fired into the darkness, bullets ripping through the air. "You cannot escape," he roared. Jason silently climbed up into the supermarket's rafters, where he had hidden a long steel wire. He dropped down, the wire wrapping around the last henchman's neck, and pulled tight. The man struggled briefly, then went limp. Only Liam was left, standing in the smoke, his eyes scanning the room. Jason dropped down behind him, pressing a knife to his throat. "Drop the gun, or you'd," he said, his voice as cold as steel. Liam scoffed, spinning around to knock the knife away and throwing a punch. Jason dodged it, but Liam was faster than expected. He kicked Jason in the stomach, sending him stumbling back into a shelf. The pain was sharp, but Jason did not stop. He grabbed a shard of broken glass from the floor and threw it, hitting Liam's hand and making him drop the Desert Eagle. Jason lunged, tackling Liam to the ground, and the two men grappled. Liam pulled a knife and slashed, but Jason blocked it with his forearm, drawing blood. He used his strength to twist Liam's wrist until the knife fell. A solid punch to the jaw brought Liam to his knees, but Liam was not finished. He grabbed a nearby iron bar and swung it hard. Jason rolled away, picked up Liam's gun, and shot him in the leg. Liam roared in pain and collapsed. Jason got to his feet, breathing heavily, blood dripping from the wound on his arm. "Tell me, where is Javier?" he demanded. Liam just laughed, blood trickling from his lips. "You will never make it to Mexico City." Jason did not reply, instead smashing the butt of the gun against Liam's head, knocking him unconscious. Jason turned to see Chris Pratt standing at the back door, a worried look in his eyes. "Everyone is safe." "Jason, are you okay?" Jason nodded, wiping the blood from his arm. "You did good. Now go, and do not come back." He took out his phone and called Morgan Freeman. "Liam is down. I have the USB. Send it to the FBI. But keep my name out of it." Morgan sighed. "You are going too far." "Jason, Javier will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Jason hung up, his expression hardening. In Mexico City, Javier Bardem received the news of Liam's failure. He shattered his glass, roaring in fury. "Get all the men. I will deal with this guy myself." He stood at the window, looking down at Mexico City, his eyes burning with rage. Back in the supermarket, Jason inspected his wound, wrapping it tightly with a cloth. He knew that to end it all, he had to go to Javier's stronghold. The final battle was approaching, and he would not stop now. A private jet landed at a small airfield on the outskirts of Moscow, Russia. Just as dusk fell, Jason Statham stepped out, his black coat whipping in the cold wind. He carried a fake passport provided by Samuel Jackson, along with a backpack containing a pistol, a combat knife, and the USB with evidence of Javier Bardem's crimes. After the battle in the New York supermarket, Jason knew that to end the criminal empire, he had to strike Javier's final stronghold, an illegal oil smuggling operation run from a secret port in Moscow. He clenched his fists, his gaze as sharp as steel, ready for the final fight. Meanwhile, in a lavish palace on the outskirts of Moscow, Javier Bardem stood before a large window, looking down at the glittering city lights. He had just received news that Liam Neeson was taken down in New York, and the money laundering warehouse in Mexico City had been destroyed. Hundreds of millions of dollars were gone, and the FBI was now on his trail thanks to the USB. Jason sent to Morgan Freeman. Javier slammed his fist on a table, his voice a low growl. "Who is he? Some washed-up agent dares to challenge me." He ordered his men to tighten security at the port, where millions of barrels of illegal oil were shipped out each month. Jason rented an old truck and drove through the snow-covered streets of Moscow. He stopped at a seedy bar to meet Natasha Romanoff, a former Russian agent he had worked with on a previous mission. "I need information on Javier's port," Jason said, sliding a stack of cash across the table. Natasha raised an eyebrow, studying him. You are on a suicide mission. Jason, that port is guarded like a fortress. But if you are determined, here is the layout. She handed him a small GPS device showing the port's location on the Moskva River. That night, Jason approached the port, staying hidden in the shadows. The dock was brightly lit by halogen lamps, with dozens of workers moving oil drums, while 10 guards armed with rifles patrolled. In the center, a tall man, Idris Elba, was overseeing the operation. Another of Javier's trusted lieutenants. Jason watched from a distance, memorizing every detail: camera positions, escape routes, and an explosive storage shed near the dock. He took out his jammer, disabled the cameras, and slipped in through an abandoned sewer pipe. Inside, Jason moved like a phantom, taking down a guard with a strike to the back of the neck. He took the man's ID, disguised himself as a worker, and entered the main area. Idris was inspecting a shipment of oil, unaware of the danger. Jason hid behind a shipping container and planted a small timed bomb under an oil tanker, but a guard spotted him and yelled, and an alarm blared across the port. Jason drew his pistol, taking down 2 charging guards with precise shots to the chest. Idris spun around, drew his own gun, and opened fire. Jason dove behind the container as bullets ripped through the air. He detonated the bomb early, and a massive explosion rocked the port. Fire erupted, engulfing the oil tanker. Workers fled in terror while Idris roared, calling for more guards. Jason moved through the smoke and flames, his knife flashing. He stabbed one man in the arm, grabbed his gun, and shot another. Idris charged with an iron bar, but Jason dodged, wrapping a steel wire around his neck and pulling it tight. "Where is Javier?" Jason growled. Idris smirked, blood trickling from his lips. "The palace on the outskirts, but you will be dead before you get there." Jason smashed the butt of his gun against Idris's head, knocking him out cold. He ran to the riverbank and jumped onto a small boat. A second explosion rocked the port, completely destroying the oil smuggling operation. Jason steered the boat away, his expression cold. In New York, Morgan Freeman called. "The FBI got the USB. Javier is a wanted man. But you need to be careful. He has people inside the Russian government." Jason nodded. "I am ending this." In his Moscow palace, Javier received news of the port's destruction. He roared, smashing an antique vase. "He is here." In Moscow, he ordered all his men to assemble, preparing one final trap. But Jason was already close, hidden in the snowy forest surrounding the palace. He checked his gun, his knife, and his stopwatch. The final battle was here, and he had no intention of letting Javier survive. Snow fell heavily in the forest on the outskirts of Moscow, blanketing Javier Bardem's lavish palace in white. Jason Statham stood silently behind a tree, his breath misting in the frigid air. His eyes were razor-sharp, his hands gripping his pistol and combat knife. After destroying the oil smuggling operation at the port, he knew this was the final chance to end Javier and his criminal empire. The palace was brightly lit, but Jason could sense the trap waiting inside. He took the stopwatch from his pocket, his finger brushing the button, an old companion from countless fights. Inside the palace, Javier Bardem stood before the fireplace, the flames flickering across his face, revealing his pure rage. He had lost everything: the nightclub in New York, the money laundering warehouse in Mexico City, and the port in Moscow, thanks to the USB from Jason. The FBI was hunting down his associates. Javier tightened his grip on his glass, roaring at his bodyguard. "Where is he? Some agent thinks he can destroy me." He had positioned 12 guards, armed with rifles and grenades, at every entrance. "It is tonight?" Javier said, his voice as cold as ice. Jason slipped past the fence, disabling the cameras with his jammer. He climbed onto the roof, cut a small pane of glass, and dropped into a dark hallway. He heard the footsteps of a guard approaching a fit. Jason pressed himself against the wall. His steel wire flashed, and he garroted the man, pulling him into the shadows. He took the guard's ID card and moved to the main floor. The palace was a labyrinth, but the map from Natasha Romanoff led him straight to the grand hall where Javier was waiting. A guard spotted him and yelled as the alarms blared. Jason rolled behind a stone pillar and fired twice, dropping 2 advancing guards. 3 more charged in, guns blazing. He dodged, plunged his knife into one man's shoulder, then pistol whipped the second into unconsciousness. The third threw a grenade, but Jason kicked it right back, the explosion rocking the hallway. He ran through the smoke and into the grand hall. Javier was standing there, a pistol in his hand, flanked by his last 2 bodyguards. Jason stopped and took out his stopwatch. "You have 12 seconds to drop the gun," he said in a low voice. Pressing the button, the watch started counting down. He observed them. Javier held his pistol, his right hand trembling slightly, his eyes darting around for an escape. The guard on the left clutched his rifle, his breathing heavy. The one on the right held a knife, his stance unsteady. 10 seconds. Jason rolled, dodging a shot from Javier, and threw his knife, hitting the right-hand guard's hand and making him drop his weapon. 8 seconds. He lunged forward, wrapping his steel wire around the neck of the guard on the left, pulling tight until the man collapsed. 6 seconds. Javier fired repeatedly, bullets ripping through the air. Jason dove behind a wooden table, grabbed a shard of broken glass from the floor, and hurled it into Javier's hand, forcing him to drop the gun. 4 seconds. Javier drew a knife and lunged, but Jason blocked him, twisted his wrist, and shoved him into the fireplace. Flames licked at his vest, and Javier screamed. 2 seconds. The timer stopped. "You chose wrong," Jason said, his voice as cold as ice. The last henchman burst in, but Jason shot him through the throat, and the man collapsed. Jason swept the room, finding a safe with fake passports and a list of Javier's henchmen. He sent the data to Morgan Freeman and set a timed bomb. The mansion shook as he left. Flames, consuming the remnants of Javier's empire. In New York, Anna Kendrick stood in a recording studio, singing her first song, her voice crystal clear. An envelope with $10,000 from a mysterious benefactor helped her start over. Chris Pratt, now a security guard, applauded from outside the door. "You did it, Anna," he laughed heartily. Jason returned to New York, sitting in his apartment, reading The Old Man and the Sea. Morgan called. "Javier is done. The FBI is cleaning up his network." "You did it." Jason nodded and hung up. Outside the window, New York glittered. Anna posted the song online, thanking her hidden hero. Jason saw it and gave a slight smile. He turned off the light, and darkness enveloped him. But he knew justice had prevailed.